right now I'm here for you guys because thinking about the future is stressful. You're gonna do computer science. I was gonna do computer science for a while. So I don't know if I've told this story on stream before. I think I have. I actually, in 7th grade, a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I hacked my school's system. Like, I hacked the computers at my school. I'm gonna actually go mining. I'm gonna throw my emeralds away and then I'm gonna go mining while I tell the story. So, I was a troublemaker, right? Game dev. That's another one I want to do for a while. So, okay, story time. Let me fix my posture here. Posture check. Make sure everyone fixes your posture. I highly recommend it. So, story time. This is my mind. I think. This is not my mind. This is the wrong area. Story time. So, this is for all you people who want to clip this and upload this to your YouTube channels, in case the story is entertaining enough. So, there I was in 7th grade. I think it was 7th grade. I can't remember exactly, but I think so because I remember one of the 7th grade teachers coming in to my math class and being like, "The principal needs you." But hold on. Before, it's like an 80s movie. It's like, so you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. And so, backtrack a few months ago. I'm bad at telling stories, but just bear with me. So, I wanted to play video games on the school's computers because I had the science class. Now, I'm not a science kid. I've never really been a science kid. Also, I'm just going to go till this pickaxe breaks and get a new one. So, I was never really a science kid, but my science teacher loved me because I made an offhand joke during a class where I'm like, I could teach you how to use Photoshop if you want, because she like photoshopped an image and it was very badly done, and she took that seriously, and so she actually had me teaching her Photoshop instead of teaching me science. Like, she'd give the class an assignment, and then while they're doing like the test or whatever, she'd call me up to help her with Photoshop, and she'd just give me a good grade on the test. But I was always on the computers, like the school computers during that, and so I was like, I need to figure out how to get through this firewall so I can just play whatever games I want. Because I really love the game Cave Story. It's my favorite game of all time. And I really wanted to download it on the school computers. But in order to achieve that, I needed to first get through the firewall to access the website. So I go home and I Google. This is why I don't call it hacking. A lot of my friends and family do, because they don't understand it. But I don't call it hacking. It's literally what I did was so simple. So basically, I go home and I Google how to bypass your school's firewall. First thing I Google, first thing that comes up is this thing called UltraSurf. And so I install UltraSurf. So UltraSurf is there's extensions you can get on Google Chrome, which is the main internet browser that the school used. And so if you could access the Chrome web store, you can install extensions, which they left the Chrome web store open on school computers for the teachers who wanted to install extensions that might help out their teachings. Makes sense. Pretty easy to understand. So they left it open, and so I'm like, well, if I can just install this extension that bypasses the firewall, because it was mainly developed for use in China, because they have the Great Firewall in China. So I just literally, the first thing I Googled to get through the firewall worked. I was not anticipating it to work. Here, pickaxe. And so it just worked. And so for the next few months, everything was great. No firewall. I played Cave Story on school computers. I played this thing called Poka MMO, which is literally just old Pokemon games, but it's as an MMO, which is really cool. Definitely one of my favorite things on the internet. And so everything's going great. And we were doing like things like, my friends knew, because I didn't tell anyone else, because I wasn't going to get everyone else in trouble in case I did get in trouble for this. And so everyone was like that magic person who didn't have the firewall on his computer. And so like we did things like Reddit 50/50 when that was big. I did that on school computers, which was intense. And it was so good. Incredible. Even. And then I'm like, I want to browse the deep web at school. So then I downloaded Tor. And Tor worked. But after the first time I booted it up, I remember I got it working, and then it would never work again for some reason. I think they might have like patched it out from working or something. So, I browsed the deep web with friends during the science class, because it was like towards like the middle of the year at this point. And so I believe the way the science class worked, if I remember correctly that year, is it would like, for one semester you had science and the second semester you had history. So like, science class was coming to an end basically, and we would just watch movies, so I'd be on the computers doing this with my friends. And so one day, during a study hall, I'm like, I want to play Five Nights at Freddy's, but I'm like, I can't install Steam, that's too sketchy. Why would I install Steam? And so I'm just like, I'll just look up some sort of free website that I can download FNAF 2 from to play on the school computers for fun. And so I find this sketchy website and I download it. And it's a website that I think I used before. So I'm like, oh, it's fine. Turns out it wasn't fine. It was a virus. And I kid you not, this virus almost cost the school hundreds of thousands of dollars in just broken servers. So I download it. The game doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't boot up. And I'm like, oh, probably something wrong with the school computers. It can't run it or whatever. And so I just carry on. And about a week later, I'm in math class, learning maths. And it's pretty great, because I used to love math class. And the language arts teacher, not my language arts teacher, keep in mind, just a 7th grade language arts teacher, comes into the classroom and is like, Caillou, and like, she screams, I remember. She's like, Caillou, they need you down in the office, in the principal's office, now. And I'm like, I've been a good kid, because I've been doing the VPN thing to get through the school's firewall for so long at this point, that it didn't even feel like I was doing anything wrong at that point. Like, I just didn't even think that, like, oh, this is against school rules to go through the firewall. So I'm like, I've been a good boy. Why haven't I gotten in, or why am I in trouble or whatever? So I get to the principal's office. I'm expecting, like, some sort of good thing, because I've been such a good boy lately. And there's this man with, I kid you not, the biggest eyebrows ever. And so the principal looks at me, and the principal tells me, the principal's like, Caillou, you know who this is? I'm like, no, who's that? I've never seen that man before in my life. And the principal's like, Caillou. And so, quick side note, this principal is the same principal I had in elementary school, where I was a little demon child in elementary school. Like, I caused such havoc that I got sent home early almost every single day in 4th grade because of just how much of a ruckus I would cause. So, same principal, so I think she had a vendetta against me, but anyways, so she's like, Caillou, this is Mr. K. He is the director of technology here at the school. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Still, I have no idea what's wrong. I still think everything's fine and dandy. And he's like, Caillou, nice to meet you. Puts out his hand. I shake it. It's pretty great. I'm like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? Small world. I didn't realize that in that building across the street is where you do all the fancy technology. So that's so cool. He's like, yeah, hey, you want to explain to me what Five Nights at Freddy's 2.exe is? I'm like, oh, that's a game. Still has not clicked in my head yet that I've done anything wrong. And then he's like, alright, you want to explain to me what Tor is? What do you know about the browser Tor? I'm like, and as soon as he asked me about Tor, I'm like, uh-oh, wait a minute. So, he knew, and so I'm like, oh, it's just used to browse the deep web. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I want to, and so he tells me, he's like, so, we didn't realize that you were doing anything sketchy on the school computers. I'm like, uh-huh. And he's like, until we found Five Nights at Freddy's 2 downloaded onto my school folder. Because not only did I download it on the computer, which I think I wouldn't find, I saved it to my school profile. And so I'm like, uh-oh. And so at first I lied. And I threw people under the bus like a little dickhead I was. I literally was like, oh, well, this person had access to my account. And this person had access to my account. So very obviously this couldn't have been me. Didn't end up working. And so they basically were like, yeah, this is a virus. And it was on the school systems, and it almost cost us like $500,000 of school computer property that you almost just destroyed with this virus. I'm like, oh, that's kind of wild. And so I really think though. So we go through this, and so they call home. They call my mom, and my mom, I remember her reaction was like, I don't know whether to be impressed that you got through the school firewall in 7th grade, or to be disappointed that you got through the school firewall in 7th grade. And so basically, it wasn't in the school handbook, though, that you couldn't download a VPN to bypass the firewall. That wasn't in the handbook. And so they couldn't give me detention or a suspension based on getting through the firewall. They couldn't do it because it wasn't in the handbook, and they have to follow the handbook because it's a public school. So what they had to do is they had to get me on lying about it. So they gave me a 1-day in-school suspension about lying about it. And denying it at first. But here's the funny part. Here's the part where they take the L and I don't. Oh my god. It's an abandoned mine shaft. This is actually really cool. So this is where they take the L. That my in-school suspension, where you're supposed to just be locked in a room all day in silence doing your work. You see, that day that mine was scheduled for, I don't know why I threw that in my inventory. There was a 2-hour delay because of snow. So my in-school suspension was even shorter. But I'm pretty sure I put the fear of God into them, because the thing that they told me was they're like, hey, so we really have nothing to stop you from doing this, because they can't. As far as I'm aware, what they do is they just update the handbook year by year. So because they weren't going to update it, and I obviously wasn't going to lie about it. Oh no! Oh no! Hold on. Ha 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 ha. Okay. Anyways, was not expecting to take damage there. Okay. So they basically were scared, I think, of me doing it again. So what they ended up doing was they told me, they're like, hey, so we eventually take interns to get a job in high school. And he's like, I'll give you this job if you don't hack again. And I'm like, alright, sounds good. And then, you know, 9th grade comes around and I eventually get the job. And I end up don't liking it, and I quit it like 2 years later. But anyways, yeah, I broke the school's firewall in 7th grade. And the reason that I think they update the handbook every year only is because the very next year of school, a kid actually got expelled, I believe, for doing the exact same thing I did. And they caught him for it because he downloaded a virus, because he was doing it maliciously and not just to like play games. And they actually expelled him for it because it was now in the handbook. You cannot download a VPN to circumvent the school firewall. But here's the thing. They told me I couldn't hack anymore after that incident. So I did the only reasonable thing, because I'm a very spiteful person. Well, not anymore, but like back then I was a very spiteful person. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can't hack anymore. I get it. So then I proceeded to teach every single person in my grade, which would eventually spiral into every single person in the school, how to break the firewall. And to this day, so many kids still do it. Almost every kid in my high school has broken the firewall, because everyone knows how to do it. It's common knowledge. But I was the first one. Let it be known I was the first one at my school to break the firewall.